Welcome back to the Trinity Podcast. We are on part 2 of our leadership discussion. If you tuned in last week, we had a great conversation around some guiding principles for leadership, whether related to a parent in a marriage relationship, maybe even if you run your own small business or if you work in a church. Hopefully those first couple of guiding principles were helpful to you. If you missed it, I encourage you to go back and listen. But today we're going to hit a couple more guiding principles to being a good leader. Again, I have Daniel Riddick and Tom Messer here, and we also have Jeremiah Stanley joining us today as well. Jeremiah is the campus pastor out at our Mandarin location. Daniel is at our Oakleaf location, and Pastor Tom is our senior pastor, if you don't know who they are. But gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you here. Leadership discussion, part 2. Let's do it.
All right.
This first one's going to be a fun one. Hard conversations. Hard conversations. Now, I am built in my own personality of just how God made me, and I've had to fight against it. I hate having hard conversations. Now, I don't know if there's anyone that loves having them. Maybe some of you do. But I tend to find every other avenue I can take before actually having the hard conversation, because that's just how I'm wired at times. But we have to have hard conversations in leadership, even as parents, even in a marriage relationship, we have to have the hard conversations. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about hard conversations. Let's start it here. Why should leaders work on the skill, and I would call it a skill, of being able to have a hard conversation? If someone's just new into leadership or they've been in it for a while, why is it important for them to have this skill in their toolbox of being able to have a hard conversation? Pastor, we'll start with you.
Well, if you're going to be a leader, you're going to have hard conversations. So you better develop the skill set to do it. And the one, I'll tell you one.
Oh, it's going to get good. Here we go.
Well,
I was kidding.
So, when I started pastoring here, I was the week I became pastor, I turned 33, and immediately the way we were structured, I was ultimately all hiring and firing. I had full authority over all that, and the biggest concern some of the older lay leaders had was about whether I had enough experience and had what it took to fire people. And while I haven't had to do that a lot, most of the time I've had to fire people, it's been memorable. And, those are the hardest of conversations.
Sure.
They may not be the hardest, but they're among the harder conversations. And while I don't think, hey, I can't wait to have the next one, I've learned over the years that you can actually make those effective, and they can help you develop better as a leader. And I did have somebody tell somebody one time, they said, if the pastor had if he was a strong leader, he'd look me in the eye and fire me. And that person told me they didn't know that this other person didn't know that I was told that. So we were going to let the person go anyways. And I had him come to my office. I said, I don't want you to misunderstand this. I said, I want you to look me in the eyes. His eyes came back as big. I didn't do it despitefully.
Right.
There was a point that, and you do that once or twice, and people they'll either do what you say or they'll start avoiding you, for sure.
I think to answer your question about why do we have to have the hard conversations, usually, there's always, I'm sure, some exception about this, but usually the hard conversations are around important things. Mm-hmm. And so the opposite of that is true. If they're usually about important things, then to not have hard conversations is to consistently avoid things that are important to the health of your marriage, important to the health of your home, to your church, to your business or organization. And that is just the hard reality, is oftentimes important things can become challenging things to work through. And those two things often, not always, but often go together. And so to consistently get into a pattern in your marriage, I mean, this is huge. It's like to just keep avoiding a difficult conversation, you're probably kicking something very important, kicking the can down the street. And at some point, that thing comes up, to bite you in a huge way. And that's just something we have to consider. Hey, if I feel a certain way about this, it's probably an important issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So are you in the category of hard conversations don't bother you, or is that something that you're like, wow, I need to work on this. This is something that took you a while to learn, the hard conversation skill?
I find it very intriguing. So on the Enneagram scale, I am a 9, which is the peacemaker. And it seems like sometimes that is my lot in life, whether it's in a family dynamic or work dynamic, that I find myself in those situations of trying to be the negotiator or the mediator. And I find it interesting because oftentimes the reason we avoid the conversations, like the hard conversations, is because in our minds, we cast like the worst case scenario. This is probably what's going to happen. We're going to bring that up, and then this is going to be the result.
Yes.
The apocalypse is going to be the result of that or whatever. And I find it interesting that in my limited knowledge of leadership and experience of that oftentimes it doesn't go like the way you think it's going to go. It's usually there is something that you didn't understand or know going into that caused the situation, the dynamics to be different than you were missing a piece of information, or there was something about it that caused you to think it's going to be this.
Right.
And then once you have it, it's like, oh, okay, well here, that's helpful to know that now.
Yeah.
And we can reset, navigate, negotiate, what have you. But it rarely ends up being exactly the way you paint it in your mind, is what I have observed. But I find it intriguing because it's like I enjoy going into those situations, because if you go into it with a discovery mindset, it can help.
Yep.
Well, obviously being dean of students at a college, you had a lot of opportunity to have hard conversations.
Oh,
And
sure.
I would say this, Joel, it's inevitable. It's inevitable if you're a dad or a mom that you're going to have hard conversations. It's inevitable if you're really going to if you're going to do life with people, you're going to have hard conversations. If you pass your church, you're going to have hard conversations. If you try to do marriage counseling, you're going to have there's all sort of things. So it's inevitable that you're going to have them. I think Jeremiah made a really valid point, is you can only be direct to the degree that you understand the problem.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful about having a hard conversation until you have a good grasp of the situation. So before you have a hard conversation, you better be a good listener. You gotta know what questions to ask, and you gotta listen. Hard conversations, you should never have them electronically. I would avoid having a hard conversation, something. In fact, I would tell you mistakes I've made is saying hard things in an email or hard things on a phone call. Because I'm way more gentle in person than I am behind a keyboard. Yeah. And I know that about me. And I will do way better in communicating empathy and thoughtfulness in a personal conversation. And then the other thing is that you got to separate out in the hard conversations that if it appears that if the win is you win, they lose, you probably aren't going to have a successful conversation. If you can get the hard conversation to where there's a pathway forward, where it's aiming at a resolution, even though it may be painful in the moment, but you're offering hope, you're offering a path. I can think about situations that we've dealt with people from a church, not discipline standpoint, but things problems that need to be confronted, right? We're not looking to throw people under the bus, cut them off. We're actually trying to resolve a problem and bring about restoration and reconciliation, which is a turning point in discipline and in school life, right? The goal is not to be punitive to everybody. The goal is to get them on a path to restoration and recovery.
Right.
So when that is understood, you're actually gaining goodwill to give people what you ultimately want is them to give you permission to speak as directly into their life in the situation as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get there before you have the hard conversation, you're probably going to get a good outcome.
Yeah. That's good. Well, how does the Bible talks about it's important to speak the truth in love? How does that relate into hard conversations, and how do you guys apply that? There's one way to be direct to
You
someone.
say I love you, then you just drop the ball.
You just say,
But
this is gonna hurt me more than it's gonna hurt
But-
you.
I've heard that one time too.
No, but there's been some hard conversations I've had to have, and then afterwards, my wife's usually pretty good about asking for a rundown of how the conversation went, and I'll tell her. And I love my wife, but there's been some times where she'll say, "Man, you let them off easy." I'm like, maybe you should have said that, you know what I mean? And she's just telling me, she's trying to help me get better. But how do you balance those two things? I'm gonna take truth; they need to hear it, but I also want to have love be a part of it too.
Yeah, I think a part of that is checking your motivations going into the conversation, especially if you're instigating the hard conversation.
Yeah.
And if you're coming into something and the only solution is this has to happen my way, or I'm coming in exclusively with the authority of my position, it's like those are really problematic and probably unloving ways to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Because you're going to drive it hard in one direction, or the relationship kind of goes out the window, and you're doing this from a place of authority. So I think you really have to check your motivations. Hey, why do we need to have this? And if you're having the conversations because it's right, because it's good, because it's healthy, or because I don't understand and I want to learn, those are much better and stronger places of footing than simply, I'm angry. This is not going. I'm going to make it happen my way, or because I said so. You're going to land in two completely different places. And again, in your framing, I think one of those is love, and one of those is not. I think the other thing too is you have to go in and manage the expectations that are put on you, and love. Oftentimes, and I've even experienced this on a number of occasions recently, where love allows me to enter into a conversation and be okay with outcomes that and I know you were kind of joking about what you said with Christy, but that even when other people wish you would have said something, done something differently, love allows me to go, hey, we're going to land in a different place than everybody else wants or wish, and they're not the ones having the conversation.
Yeah.
So, I do think that is a key thing is going in and that attitude and that spirit of love, and it will change it.
That's good.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with the idea of love. So I'm in a unique situation where on our property we have 3 generations living on the same property. So, and in fact, this month we celebrate 5 years we've been in that situation. So for 5 years we've managed to not have a murder on the property. And
you're talking about your home property, not
correct,
the church,
yes,
right?
yes, yeah. In our home situation, yes, sorry. But the laboratory for that to me has been amazing to really practice the dynamics of this. And I think you're spot on. It's the relational context that if we agree at the front, whether it's a family situation, a church dynamic, a peer, friendship, if we have the context of relationship, and if this person believes that I have their best interests in mind, I can have a difficult conversation. And we may not like the words we have to exchange. We may not like aspects of that. But if I truly believe that someone else is there for me and wants me to win, and I want them to win, the chances of that conversation, as difficult as it may be, ending in a good place is higher than if I have some kind of suspicion or mistrust of what's their agenda, what's their angle, where are they trying to go with this. It's going to fall apart pretty quick.
You know, John Maxwell is, you don't hear a lot about him in current times. In the last 5 to 6 years, he's probably not as prominent as he was maybe 25 years ago. He taught a leadership principle. I may have learned it 30 or 40 years ago, but he would teach this leadership principle that character, which he would equate that with integrity, personal integrity, and then credibility for a leader. And the illustration he used about credibility was that, you know, if you think about all the decisions that you make as a leader, all the good decisions, you put change in your pocket, and every bad decision, you take change out of your pocket. And so Maxwell had this principle that if you have character, if people know you are a person with character integrity, and at the given moment that you're dealing with a problem, and particularly a difficult problem, if you have enough credibility, if you have more change in your pocket, so in other words, you've got $5 of change in your pocket and you're making a $4 decision, which in his world would have been a really big problem that you're dealing with, you're fine.
Yeah.
Because you have enough credibility, you're authorized in a sense, you have the credibility to handle the problem. If you try to handle a $4 problem and you only have 25 cents in your pocket, you get a hard time. You're just not gonna, you know. And he used that in the context of if you make bad decisions on $4 decisions with 25 cents in your pocket, eventually you're going to lose your job. People are just going to stop following you. Well, that's the principle about hard conversation. If people know that you love them, that you've built a relationship, that you've paid the price, that you've been there for them, that's gaining the credibility to be able to have the harder conversations over the more delicate issues with them.
Yeah.
And I think we underestimate how valuable time that you invest as a leader in people is. And the more time you invest in them, the easier it is for you to speak directly into their lives in difficult situations.
I think another way to get into these things, and again, it depends a little bit on the circumstances, but a lot of our hard conversations, we get, it's easy for us to get into a mindset that every difficult decision is something that's incredibly black and white. There's a right, and of course, we're on the side of right. Of course. And then there's a wrong, and I'm here to correct an injustice. While there inevitably are moments like that where there's great moral clarity and the hard conversation is around something that's very much a right or wrong issue, more often than not, I think the difficult conversations are around conflict, misunderstanding, differences of opinion, where all of a sudden there's more gray, or there's at least a lack of clarity in communication. Love is approaching those conversations with humility, and you can actually get into a conversation that's not accusatory. Jeremiah, why did you? And you can start the conversation and go, hey, listen, I might be wrong about this. And that's a really disarming way to begin a hard conversation. I might be wrong about the way I think about this. Can you help me understand your perspective? Yeah. Now, again, he may not convince me, but at least we're in it, and we're in it in a way that's not, inflammatory, and that doesn't put him on the defensive, on his heels right off the bat. That's a great point.
I prefer the compliment sandwich, or where it's kind of like, hey, here's what I really like about you. You're doing great. However.
Well, I mean,
it's a way to do it. You know what I mean?
There's a really practical way about that. I had a conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And I said, hey, we're really good friends. Yes. And when we finish this conversation, we're still going to be really good friends.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Boom. Here it is. And if it goes back to what we said, if they believe that because you've proven that to be true, you can handle it, and they can handle it.
Right. So last thing about this, and then we'll jump into the last two. On the last episode, we talked about knowing when to push and when to be patient. How do you know when it's time to have the hard conversation? Because obviously there are times where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna see how this turns out, and I'm just gonna be patient. But then there's times when you're like, okay, we need to talk. Is there any indicators or roadmaps on how to know, or is it just case by case basis of just, because you don't want to have it too soon, but then sometimes you have to be patient. How do you know when it's time to say, we need to talk?
Well, I think you have to go through a process, and you know, I've dealt with a couple kind of these issues today already. If you're having to deal with somebody on a personal level, and their action or inaction or whatever the issue is that you're dealing with them that you need to have a hard conversation about is not affecting the organization or a bunch of people, other people, then you need to exercise patience. If it's having an impact on others negatively and it's going to create a bigger problem that's going to, it's going to start more fires that you're going to have to put out, then you need to deal with it quicker. And typically, the sooner you deal with something, you're going to solve it at a smaller level. It doesn't have time to grow and fester. The other part of it is what Jeremiah mentioned up front, is that sometimes you don't have the whole picture. And so, a process that I might go through is, I'll walk you through an example. Okay, I know I've got this issue. I'm going to have to confront it eventually. I'm not quite sure I have my mind wrapped around the whole thing. So I would start with a conversation with a person and say, hey, I want to get something on your radar. I think this is a pain point. I really don't have any idea if it's a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 or an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. Want to have the conversation with you early so it's on your radar like it's on my radar. And I want to understand, I'm hearing this, I want to understand kind of where we're at. Well, that buys me a lot more time to have that inevitable conversation, because now I'm raising the issue. They're clearly going to be influenced by it. And I'm also giving them a lot of opportunity to speak into it so that they don't feel defensive. I'm coming to them and saying, hey, I have a problem, you're the problem, and I've already made my mind up. Once you get into that, then you create room to work through the problem, and you let the process play out. Most of the time with dealing with, I'd rather be slow and accurate than fast and have to backpedal. So I'm going to give it time, okay? And then I'm really going to be fixated that there's two things that are always in play: outcome and process. I'm willing for the process to take as long as it needs to take if I can get to the outcome I'm trying to get to. If I can't get to the outcome, I'm going to have to speed the process up, right? And I don't want to lose the ability to get to the outcome we need to get to. So you have to see those two things are different, process and the outcome. We actually have a value as a ministry that the way we do things matters as much as what we do. So in other words, we want to treat people in the process in a way that we can preserve the relationship even when we're working through difficult things. And we have a large ministry with a lot of employees. In the employee HR process, sometimes I had this conversation last week, I'm hearing what you're telling me about your coworker. I want you to know we don't discuss with you what's in their HR file. If I discuss with you what's in their HR file, then you might presume I would discuss with somebody else what's in your HR file. I'm not going to do that. So process matters. And we want to value you, and we want to value them. And we want you to know that we value you. By the way, we value them. Process really matters to us. Outcome also matters. But we're not going to sacrifice process to get to outcome.
That's really good. So last two things, and these last two may lean more towards what we experience maybe in church life or in a business, but I think these are good to talk about. This next one is: a successful leader knows how to replace themselves. So this is more of the leadership pipeline kind of discussion. But let's talk about that. A successful leader knows how to replace themselves. How does a leader consistently and constantly equip people to grow and take next steps? What are some ways that you challenge people that you lead, or people in your that are following you? How do you challenge them to grow, take next steps, and how do you equip them delegation, whatever it may be. What does that look like maybe in your context?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually think there is. So I agree, there is a strong organizational component to this, especially if you're in management and you've got people underneath you. I think there's a real parenting thing here.
Sure.
We kind of talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but essentially, as you raise kids, one of the roles is you're in many ways. You're working yourself out of a job, or at least out of the current job, that the role that you play in their life, especially in those adolescent years up through young adulthood. It's like, at some point my kids have to be living on their own, working their own job, providing their own way, because they're not going to live with me forever. So, so which means I have this role that I currently, whatever, and every parent listening right now could, if your kids are 2, if your kids are 12, if your kids are 20, right now you have a role that you've got to be getting yourself out of to get into a healthier next step, next stage, role. And a lot of that is recognizing, it's the classic, and this does work in management.
Yeah.
What am I doing for them that they should be doing themselves, or that they could be doing? What am I doing that's actually not empowering them to, learn, grow, mature, the responsibility. And so, I actually think this principle, of course, translates at a management level and on teams and everything. But I think it's a massive principle for parents within the home. Your whole job is about role replacement, as you kind of work through the stages of parenting.
What's that whole idea of, when your kids at some point, maybe you all did this, you go out to eat somewhere, you would help cut up their food for them because they needed help. They couldn't operate the fork and the knife, and you'd be over there cutting up their food and you'd eat your food. Obviously, at some point, you would hope that
they're going to do it.
They're going to cut their own food up, and you're not over there cutting their steak up for them at the age of 18.
And at some point, you have to kind of let them do a terrible job at cutting their food up.
Yes, exactly. And then I guess one day they'll be cutting the food for us, right? Is that how it works?
Exactly.
Is that how it works?
Circle. That's the final rule.
But so if we go down that trail, I instantly think of a helicopter parent. Like, how do you fight against that and being that parent or that leader that kind of does everything for those that you're in charge of? I don't know.
So this is, to me, a foundational principle of leadership. I'm a huge proponent of this idea of like replacing yourself and empowering people. So there was a leadership expert that I heard one time said, replace yourself, you'll always have a place. And I think part of even in our parenting, sometimes what holds us back is that we are intimidated by someone who knows more about something than we do or can do something better. And so I've seen in many instances, either growing up or even just through friendships or whatever, where parents would be okay with the child getting to a certain point, but then at some level there would be a pressure of like, oh, well, who do you think you are? You're going to tell me what to do, or you're going to, and so we don't want to be outdone. And I just tried to, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect in this, but I tried to keep that in the back of my mind as we were, growing our boys, to say, it's okay. Like if I'm not going to be an expert in every area. And if there's something that my child knows more about, I can learn from them. They can teach me, and that's okay. And I should empower them and not be intimidated by that, or somehow make them feel inferior or have to push them down. Like it's okay for them to have a subject matter or an level of expertise in something that I can even learn from. And I think that is true not only in the home, but also in our churches or our business world, whatever, that people are going to know more than you. And that's okay. And we should embrace that and empower them and be okay with that situation. And we'll always have a place. Like there'll be areas that you are an expert in too, and we can complement each other.
Yeah, the advantage you have as a parent is that you have the one thing your kids don't have, and that's experience.
True.
And if you can free yourself up to let them have expertise, like my kids know things about technology, I'll never know. I mean, it's just second nature to them. The one thing I have that they'll probably never get more of than me is life experience. And as you get older, you lean on the advantage you have. You don't try to disadvantage them over the advantages that they do have.
Yeah.
And if you can get comfortable with that, that makes they know things you don't know. You have experience they don't have.
Yep.
You combine those two things together.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a lot
Very
more powerful.
powerful.
You have to keep your ego in check. I mean, a lot of this, and especially if you when you get into, I mean, it can be this way in the home, I guess, but definitely in organizational leadership, it's like so much of it, and so many people listening who are in, especially kind of corporate, environments. It's like there's such a either ego or power dynamic involved that everybody gets obsessed with, and the real, if you get serious about wanting to develop leaders and genuinely help other people, grow, is you have to kind of get comfortable with the idea that at some point, and maybe they're going to go beyond where I'm at.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can never get to that place.
Yeah. To your point, there was a statement that I heard one time that said, if you refuse to listen to the people around you, eventually you'll find yourself surrounded by people who have nothing to say.
Yeah,
that if you cannot allow for other people on your team to have expertise and knowledge, and like you said, collaborate with that, eventually they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're not going to continue to be a part of that process.
So we'll finish with this, and I think this is important as leaders. It says a successful leader casts clear vision or is able to set goals. So let's talk about those two dynamics. What does that look like in a job leadership? But then what does it look like in a family as you are husbands leading your family? How do we cast vision or set goals for our family? And what's a process you can go through? How regularly should you do that? What does that look like? Maybe in your family or...
I love this one because it's something that I find myself in a regular conversation with our kids and even Jenny and I talking about, 12-month goals or even like both 12, 3, and 5 is the way I like to do it. And so, I mean, I had this conversation with our oldest son just recently. Like I said, okay, a year from now, different areas of life, what do you want this to look like? And what is your vision for this? How can I help you get there? And I think that's a powerful conversation to have because a lot of times we just don't think about it.
Yeah.
And we end up a year down the road. We're going to get a year older regardless.
Right.
And we can either do that intentionally or unintentionally. And there's a big difference if you have a plan and a goal. You may not get there, but even if you get halfway there, you're further down the road than you would have been.
Pastor, you said you're a vision guy. So what does this look like for you?
Yeah. So I think... truthfully, I probably am not big on this in family life. I love what he just said. I think it's a great way to do it. I get the tension. I have this tension that my wife and kids don't want me to bring work home, and if I start acting, the last thing I can act like in our home is a CEO. I mean, that would not go over well.
They don't want to have a vision or strategy session with you.
Shut up.
Shut up. Yeah.
So,
Guys, what's working, what's not working in the house?
But I do. So I would say we have a lot of healthy conversation around what can we do to help our kids be in good places, and it doesn't feel maybe vision casting or goal setting, but it's what I would call shared values of we look at life the same way. We have the same aspirational goals and dreams. In leadership life, and I'm not saying there's anything bad with that, it's just my unique context of whatever. I do think in leadership life, if you're not clear about vision, there's an underlying frustration that people have. They don't know what we're trying to do. They don't know. So it'd be like this. The way I'd equate it this. When you struggle to create clear vision, it's like not having a scoreboard in a game, right? Like we can go play pickup basketball, and after a while, you're like, okay, are we playing at 21 or are we playing for 30 minutes?
There's got to be a scoreboard.
How do we know, how do we know when this is over? How do we know who won? How do we, right?
Yep.
If you don't have vision in in vocation or even in our context, ministry life, people are not sure if we're winning or not, and that leads to frustration. So I think that's a really clear thing. On the other hand, if your vision is so detached from measurable targets and it's kind of way out there, again, and it's an old Maxwell thing, if you think you're leading and no one is following you, you're only taking a walk, right?
Yeah.
And a person that's one step ahead is a leader. A person that's 10 steps ahead is a martyr. In other words, you get to a point where people are just going to say, nothing to do with you.
Right.
So you have to. I would say this. I think there's two-part component to it, and you actually stated this in the question. It's vision clarity. It's being clear about what's in the future. Where are we going? And I don't think you have to be so far down the road people can't relate to it, but I think it has to be clear enough that people say, oh yeah, hey, we did that. We're making progress.
Yeah.
You said we did. We followed through. And as long as there's that kind of progress, the people want that. I think how I would get that into family life is I'm more apt to say to my kids, what's the next thing we're going to accomplish? And for Jacob, it's finishing school. For Drew, there's things he's trying to do in his business life. For Michael, there's some things in his personal life. For Christy and Patrick, there's things that they want to do, particularly as it relates to the future for their kids. And it's not so much I'm casting vision for them, is that I'm sensitive to what they're trying to accomplish, and I'm having conversations about, it may be, hey, I'm praying for you, or it may be, how can I help you, or what do you need me to do to help us to see this become real in your life? Those are the things that my kids would respond to.
You can flesh this out in 100 ways in detail, but very at a high level principle. And we kind of really worked through this. We went through a process a number of years ago, and the picture really helped shape my thinking about vision. That as a principle, vision, and you could say this about a church or business, or even I do think a home at levels, should be anchored into things that are more timeless, depending on what we're talking about, that are eternal, and less material, less personality, and there was this kind of description, of this upper room and lower room thinking as it relates to vision. And it's so easy for us to create a vision in our church, in our organization, even in our homes, that's about lower room thinking, which is, you can remember all the pieces, the people, the places, programs, personalities. And the problem, this is kind of all of those things. If your vision's built on those things, there's a huge problem. They all change. And so if your vision is based on a personality, there's a well-known and well-documented, a number of years ago, mega national, attention mega church. And it's like the personality got forced out for all kinds of reasons. And one of the largest churches in the country closed in 10 weeks. And it has been diagnosed, 6 ways to Sunday. But the point is like if you build your thing on the wrong thing, when it goes away, you can be in trouble. And if the place changes, and so the more that you can anchor the vision into things that are more timeless, and again, I think in the context of a church or even a family that are eternal.
Yeah.
Hey, if the ultimate goal for my kids in our home is we love Jesus and we're committed to the local church and all those kind of things. If I come home and I got the pink slip and I lost my job, it doesn't mean we've lost a vision and purpose as a family, because we're anchored into something bigger than that. The flip side is if the vision for your home is make a lot of money or get the best job or get into the best school, those things either sometimes don't happen or they get taken away from you. And at that moment, you'll quickly realize you've kind of attached your horse to the wrong buggy. And so I would just say, very simple principle as you flesh that out is make the vision of your life, your family, your home, your church, your ministry, attach it into things that are timeless, eternal, that will exist beyond you, and you'll be on more sure footing.
Well, that's a great place to wrap up this conversation on leadership, and appreciate you guys. Appreciate you leaning in today. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Again, we encourage you to jump online at YouTube, Spotify, or the app and subscribe to our podcast. It launches every week Tuesday. Tuesday morning, we love for you to listen in. And again, right here at Trinity, we want to help everyday people discover an extraordinary life with God. We'll catch y'all next time.